we're changing on 1 July. All of our houses is going to look like this.
Okay.
Instead of the orange.
Yeah, what's the reasoning? Welcome to another episode of Health and Safety Unplugged. I'm your host, Matt Jones, and today I am joined by Joe Prigmore, who is a very well-known face in the health and safety community in New Zealand, and I'm really rapt to be talking with. So Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for making the time to catch up. This is awesome. And agreeing to letting me push the record button as well. Even more exciting. So who knows where this is going to go.
Your guess is as good as mine. Probably better, given that you're more organised.
Yeah, me organised. No. Joe, it's really lovely to catch up. For many, you're a familiar face in the health and safety space, but for those who perhaps haven't had an opportunity to hear or meet you, could you perhaps do a quick intro to let people know who you are?
Okay. Technically, I am the weird pommy woman with the different coloured hair. That's how I'm more easily spotted. In a lot of the civil construction side of the world, I'm the toilet lady or the loo lady, because I've been banging on about access for loos for women.
Yes.
I started in health and safety nearly 25 years ago, I think. I've lived in New Zealand for 20 years. And in the UK, I was one of Her Majesty's Inspectors of Health and Safety. So I've been a generalist, and I'm definitely a generalist for a very long time. So sometimes people say, oh, you seem to know a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I've had a really long time to learn it. I was talking to someone the other day about they were trying to figure out how they would ever learn. And I was like, well, if you think about it in gaming terms, I'm level 25. Like, I've had all that time to get that knowledge. There's many slip-ups on the way. I think probably I'm mostly known for just generally being a smiley person and usually fairly blunt or not afraid to call it out if I don't think it'll work. I know, you tell me, you've known me a long time. Does that fit?
Yes, I would probably just underscore the point that you're also incredibly generous with your time and insights as well, not only online but offline. People often comment on how approachable you are, and also how sharing you are of even IP and information from one organization to another, which I think in our industry is probably critical, really, if we're trying to achieve what we're all collectively trying to achieve. So that's why I'm really excited to be catching up with you today. Plus all of that experience, right? Far out. I knew you'd been in New Zealand for a while. I hadn't realized we must have arrived at a similar time. I landed in December 2003, I think it was.
Yeah, we were November 2003. So real similar.
Amazing. So for me, it feels like New Zealand is very much home now, well and truly established. But for me at that time, I was in the hospitality sector. I was running bars and taking people out on seal swim tours and all sorts at that stage. The fact that you've been involved in health and safety for such a period of time is, I guess it's probably quite unique. There's probably only a handful of practitioners out there that have got that wealth of knowledge.
I haven't been in health and safety. Well, I sort of have. All jobs have health and safety. So when we first moved to New Zealand, my background's actually in cancer diagnosis.
Okay.
That's what my master's is in. So I was a lab rat till we got our residency. And then I worked for ACC for a few years as well. So learned all the interesting ways that people hurt themselves on this side of the planet. But there's still, at the time when I was doing those jobs, it just felt like a random selection of jobs. It's only now looking back that it looks like a sensible career choice.
Yeah, I get that. And I guess that's probably a good place to kick off, is in terms of how you did find yourself in health and safety. Because I know, speaking to many practitioners out there, that it's often not a deliberate career choice, and it sounds like that's perhaps the same for yourself.
So I was doing my master's at a hospital in the UK, so for an NHS trust, and I'd just finished that and was looking at, working in the lab longer term. really short and rubbish answer is I talk too much to work in a lab successfully.
Yeah.
It just was not a great fit. I mean, it was really interesting work, but not, no. And then the HSE, so Health and Safety Executive in the UK, were advertising, and I just kind of fell into it. And talking, being my superpower, is actually a really useful thing in health and safety, particularly a more chatty style. Like you said, people aren't afraid to approach me. I'm not very intimidating, and that's hopefully useful, you know, because people tell you all sorts of stuff, and the safety bit in your head sometimes is going la la la, but it's good stuff.
And then and then how long have you been at Fulton Hogan? Because obviously these days many associate Joe Prigmore with your time at Fulton Hogan, so it's been a few years, huh?
It's been 7 years in the national role.
Yes.
I had a year out. I did health and safety in a winery company, and I had done 7 years with Fulton Hogan before that in the Marlborough regional role. So about 14 years all up. So yes, given that prior to working for Fulton Hogan, I'd not worked anywhere. I don't think I'd made it to 5 years in any job prior to that. So yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah, amazing. And you are synonymous with breaking down difficult terminology, operating procedures, policies, and process documents, and making them more tangible and understandable. So do you make use of a secret sauce formula? Is there a particular approach that you utilize?
Yeah. Will it work at 3 a.m. in the pissing rain?
Brilliant.
It's my rule of thumb. It was quite interesting. When I had a year out and worked in the winery industry, nearly everybody there has got degrees. Even, you know, the wine cellar hands, the people are studying, but they hadn't been used to safety conversations. So you had to really change the way you speak. I think the average reading age across the whole of New Zealand now is that of a 7-year-old. So if you've got a child who's 7, their reading skill is probably at or coming up to the average reading age across New Zealand. So if we use lots of safety jargon and management words and zhuzh it all up, chances are no one's going to understand it. And when you think, and this is possibly a bit cynical, most people are not that interested in reading health and safety documentation. So if we make it complicated, they're going to be even less interested. And so I'd rather things were, say, 80% right, 80% of the time, that 80% of people can use, than we've tried to make it to the nth degree perfect, but it doesn't make sense to anybody.
Yes.
And I'm just lucky that approach has been acceptable in Fulton Hogan, because it sounds a bit rough as guts when you say it like that 3 sets of 80s, but it passes the bullshit test.
Yeah, love it. I love it. And so is there, for people who may be thinking, gosh, what does the bullshit test look like? How would you define that? What are perhaps some of the key things to look out for if it's not quite hitting that mark?
Talk to the people who are doing the job, because often we do safety to people rather than with them. And they'll soon tell you if it passes there. But it would be things like, let's try and think of a common or a home example, right? If you really like ketchup on your fries, and someone tells you, oh, you can only have ketchup if you've done these 3 things first, and you're like, no, I can just get the ketchup. And it doesn't, you know, we try and make I hate blanket safety rules. We try and make blanket safety rules, and then we're surprised when people don't follow them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so that it kind of underscores the critical importance of perhaps having the audience in mind throughout the whole conversation and throughout those decision-making processes, and then also involving them, right? And having them part of that.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry if I'm about to put my foot in it with who else might be listening to this. One of my favourite blanket rules that doesn't pass the bullshit test is banning ladders or banning Stanley knives on site, right? Because if you ban ladders, I get it, I kind of understand it, but then you see people balanced on beer crates on the back of a ute, or with their mate giving them a leg up, or with some wonky, it just, just doesn't work. It's a 3 a.m. in the rain test, like that. If you can reach a ladder, you're going to just use the ladder, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And you're dead right in terms of people will always find workarounds, right? And often if that thing isn't available for them to use, yeah, they'll find the nearest thing for them to stand on. It's totally.
So if you do ban something, and sometimes there's good reason to,
Yes.
what you have to do is test the solution that you're saying, oh, people can do this. Because if the people can do this isn't readily accessible or isn't a their solution, it's unlikely to happen.
Yep.
I guess the test is as well, is it going to happen when you're not looking? Or is it only going to happen when you're stood watching?
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. And what I also love is the fact that so far we have had no jargon or difficult terminology to unpack, right? It's simple, tangible advice and approach, which will, I guess, always stand the test of time, which is really refreshing. So yay.
I can be quite blunt. If someone sends me a sales pitch and it's full of like the management bingo words, and I'm trying to not use the swear word that I often use, I'll send it back to them and go, write it in English I can understand, or I'm not interested. Because it just makes me think people don't understand it. Before, to explain something in a simple way, you have to understand it. Yeah. Generally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the Einstein quote, because that just springs to mind, is if you can't describe something that is complicated easily, then yeah, you need to go back and study it further, because you clearly don't understand it enough. And I'm sure you've been in these situations too, where sometimes we find ourselves in the audience of a health and safety presentation and standing back and just kind of watching in horror as they are doing a really terrible job of something that should be really simple, and just completely convoluting the whole point with big terms like convoluting and jargon, which just doesn't make any sense to the audience.
No, although I appreciate it for people who are pitching for work, that if you make it sound too simple, it's hard to then charge people much for it, right?
Yes, and all there's something in there.
Even though it's harder to write simple than to write complicated, I think.
Yeah, okay, that's a really interesting point in itself, and we have to dig further. So in terms of that, so in terms of experience in where a professional has provided their services and delivered something that is arguably very expensive, have you seen examples, or have you had times where you've reviewed this material and gone, my goodness, what is this?
Yes. Yeah, okay. And I've asked for it to be rewritten.
Yeah.
Because we're paying for it.
Yeah. And so is that something that's in the past, or do you think we've still got an issue at the moment where businesses that mean well, who are taking advice of professionals, is still happening today?
I think it's less common. I think there's so much more about plain English on LinkedIn and in other places, and we're seeing it come through some of the government agencies and things that's helping. And unless you're in that space all the time, I don't know about everyone else, I just don't have time to read it if it's too complex. And hopefully you'd think that would become self-limiting, because if I don't read your pitch, I'm not going to be employing you.
Yeah, again, it's kind of the whole bullshit test, right? It's like if it's not resonating with you from the get-go, then you're not gonna give it the time, because you just don't have it.
No.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so for emerging health and safety practitioners who are perhaps looking for guidance, advice from more seasoned practitioners and professionals, what are some of the things that you would recommend they look out for if they are getting advice from others?
So I think talk to people who are doing the work. Make sure you stay connected to your customer. So for me in the civil construction, the people with boots on are the people we're trying to help be safe at work. Don't forget that they want to be safe at work too. Like, we don't need to do safety to them. And if it makes sense, it's actually, there's not very many barriers. Yeah. Be true to yourself. Don't try and be someone you're not. So if I can be well known in health and safety with a variety of coloured hairs as a female with an English accent or whatever, my slightly outspoken manner, you can do it. You don't have to be you don't have to conform to be professional, and you shouldn't have to leave yourself behind. And you demonstrate that really well as well.
Thank you.
And stand your own scope.
Yeah, there's some really good advice there, Joe.
That's
And
quite a lot, sorry.
no, it's great. Just unpacking some of those points, because clearly the role of women in construction, whether it's civil or construction or whatever in between, do you feel, well, have you noticed some positive inroads over the years? And do you feel that we still have quite a long way to go?
Actually, in the health and safety space, I think we're pretty good. So I reckon if you and I went to a site together, whether it was construction or engineering or whatever, I could probably get away with asking questions about, oh, how do you do that? And is that how it's meant to work? And do you ever feel nervous? I reckon I could get away with asking those questions probably more easily than you could, because generally people don't assume that I know the answers and I'm setting them up, which I think often a guy will get the assumption that you're trying to catch people out.
Yeah.
For our field workers, for people, I think we've come a long way. We're getting there.
Yeah. I've noticed. I mean, you mentioned this from the get-go in terms of access to toilets in the construction space. I've certainly noticed in the last few years that there seems to be a better ratio in terms of that. Is that something that you'd agree with, or do you, again, is there room for improvement?
No, I think it is a lot better. I started really banging on about this in 2019 because it's been law a long time. And don't get me wrong, we're not bad, but we're not as good as we could be. So in 2019, I was like, 2020 is the year of flying cars. It isn't the year of freedom camping in a branded high-vis. And I try to not make it gender specific.
Yes.
Because a guy might have a colostomy bag or might be diabetic and need a clean space. There's a whole range of things. But realistically, most women who are workforce age are going to need a clean space once a month where they can wash their hands before they put their tampon in, as well as wash their hands afterwards, and ideally with a bin, so you don't end up with a Ziploc bag in your bra. And I purposely don't say sanitary products because it's not always very sanitary.
Yes. Yeah, and I suspect you've probably just given a totally unique insight to many people that may even be watching this right now, because I can't think of a time that I've had a discussion over a Toolbox talk on the subject to that degree. And
and this is me being nice.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think perhaps more conversations in this space is still needed. I think it's great. I think it's a really refreshing insight. And it's probably annoying in a way because I'm speaking as if this is new information, but 50% plus of the world's population, this is a regular occurrence.
I think the thing is, I don't think anyone is being discriminatory on purpose. I genuinely don't. But the people who are planning a site are often not female, and while they'll have wives and daughters, they don't have to think about the detail as such, if you like. So I think that's something where, because I'm pretty shameless and I don't mind, just putting it out there, it's helped us have that conversation. And Christy Christensen, who sadly passed away, she was having that conversation as well. I've had a couple of students from, I think, Auckland University contact me. I'm catching up with them later this week because they're talking about it too. There's shiwis and there's things like that, but there's some things you just need to clean your hands, and anyone, whatever gender, anyone can have a dodgy fish meal or a dodgy curry or whatever, get a 24-hour tummy bug. We all don't want to be having to wait too long to get to the loo.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
If we're going to talk about treating people with dignity and really showing that we care, how can you say to someone you care about their health and safety, but don't walk too much near that tree because that's where the shitty rags are?
Yeah. This is fascinating, and for me,
Sorry.
it's no, it's great. This is fantastic, and it's a key reminder in terms of the importance of having a really rich and diverse stakeholder, duty holder discussion around the table when it comes to the planning of projects of what any shape or size. Is like, actually, who are the stakeholders here? What affects, or uh, considerations to each of the parties need, all the way through the stage of a project, including like the sanitary and toilet requirements for those
And a
who are going to be
bin.
there.
And a bin.
Yeah,
It costs $10 extra a week to have a bin in your portaloo. That's all.
yeah. So simple, right?
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy. It's really useful, and I'm sure, who knows, like even somewhere, someone may be watching this and going, "Oh my gosh, I've never considered that before, and I will stick that on my budget for the next project." Who knows?
Certainly, since I've been talking about it a lot, people are happy to
Mm,
at least raise the conversation and say, oh, hang on, because a fixed site is easy. You organise cabins. Sites where
mhm,
you're going from site to site is quite easy because you can stop off at a public loo. But
mhm,
it's those week to three week jobs that can
mm,
be tricky to
yeah.
organise,
Mhm,
perhaps.
mm.
And it doesn't have to be there on site. We can organise other things, but if we're at least thinking about it.
Yep, yep. So good, so good. And
And
you've
actually,
already.
there's a top tip. If you're a
Mhm,
manager hearing this and you're like, oh my God, what can I do? If
mhm.
you're on site, ask to use the toilet. Literally, especially if you can't see one. And then if you aren't able to use a toilet, just have a look and make sure it's clean, just especially in the summer.
Yeah, no, it's a really top tip, Joe. It's something that I have on all of my inspection checklists and the occasional audit that I do. The facilities is one of the key questions, and just like you, I have to get in there and experience it and see it firsthand to ensure that it's actually fit for purpose. Um, it's just fascinating, and
When I was an
also,
inspector in the UK, if I was
mm,
doing, and sorry guys, I'm sure it's better now, but if I was doing like small mechanic workshops, like tyre fitters, car
mhm,
mechanic type
yep,
places,
yep,
literally wouldn't have a cup of tea, which as an English person is,
mm,
a big deal all
yeah.
day because I didn't want to have to use the loo.
Yes, yeah. No, I saw one of your recent posts on, I think it was on LinkedIn, on that
Yeah,
topic, and instantly made me think of, gosh, three or four not so not so long ago examples, both in, each of them were in the either mechanics or vehicle repair centers here in Canterbury. Horrendous. Like, just you wouldn't even think about walking in, let alone using.
yeah.
Yeah, they're still out there. Yeah, so clearly still a long way to go
I
in
think
some spaces.
I don't think it's perhaps as bad as you're making it sound, but it's still
Mm,
certainly I'm having less conversations about it now. But I also
yes.
know that on some of those like LinkedIn platforms and things, I'm
Mm,
recognised as someone who will be vocal about it.
yeah. Yeah. That's great. It's good. It's an important conversation to be having. You also mentioned that you had been contacted and you're engaging with those who are either in amongst their studies, and you're certainly known for giving a lot of your time and energy to, helping and assisting people in their careers and their interests. You are also part of the Marlborough Health and Safety Forum, and I believe you have been for quite a number of
Long
years.
time.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, during that time, are there any initiatives, any events that really spring to mind that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think so. So firstly, I didn't know I was recognised for sharing my time. I just thought I was nosy, but that's cool. I like how you've made it sound positive.
It is
Um,
positive. Yeah, it's amazing, Joe.
I think I think the Marlborough Health and Safety Forum, I wasn't there quite at the start, but I nearly was. And at the time, there was 4 or 5 of us who were registered safety professionals, and a lot of the safety people in Marlborough were either an engineer who'd had it tacked onto their job or a receptionist who hadn't run away quickly enough. So the idea was to help the people with less support have access to those of us who had a bit more of a background in health and safety. And the
Mm,
fact that it's still going, 12 or 13 years later, and there's a whole new set of people. I'm not very involved anymore, although I am speaking at the next session. They bailed me up. So the two things I'm really proud of is every other year, and to be honest, this perhaps got held up with COVID, but every other year, between Nelson and Marlborough, we were alternating a safety kind of day, like a safety conference with a trade show and speakers and things, so that people at the top of the south could get access to some of that stuff. And the other thing, particularly for Blenheim, is it linked the companies up so that if one of the wineries was running confined space training, if they had, say, 4 spaces, some of the other wineries or a construction firm or someone else who was doing confined space work could dive in. And it meant that between us, we had the numbers to get a trainer here, because if we have 2 people and company B has 2 people and company C has 2 people, they'll say, well, you're going to have to come to Christchurch or Wellington. But if through the forum we were able to go, actually, we've got 30 people who need this, come up and run a course 2 days running. And it just made it much easier for the region to access that training. So that's pretty cool, I reckon. It's
really cool. So you're kind of collectively raising the standards as a group as well.
Making all of our lives a little bit easier, because organising training has to be the most thankless job in the world.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. Yeah, but it can be quite rewarding too. At the end of the day and the day after, once you've caught your breath, it can feel pretty amazing getting lots of really great people together under one roof as well. It's so neat. It's so cool. And then
actually, and I made another note. Sorry, this is one of the ones that I did think is important. It might be, especially. One of the things that's really changed, I think, over the years is our knowledge and our trust in our local consultants. So typically you can look at consultants a bit. There was a WorkSafe inspector who came years and years and years ago now, who was quite derogatory about consultants, and they're going to give you this because they're going to want more work and more work. And I know that can be true sometimes, but it really got our local consultants, like, they were really annoyed about it. And they know we're coming and we're doing this and we're sharing this knowledge. We're not charging people for this. And so it's helped people know who they can ask for help.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. When they otherwise may not have had exposure to or seen them in action. That's a really good way of putting it. It's actually probably quite an important lesson at a wider scale as well. That's one of the reasons why I spend a lot of my time when I can online, is to help to get a message out there and getting beyond the traditional. I still see some consultancies behaving as if it's smoke and mirrors, or everything's hidden behind the curtains or the cloak, and it's like it's just kind of trying to demystify it all and removing the jargon and just simply putting out what
and I think that's where the Facebook group works really well, because anyone can come and ask, and you might have to sift through the replies. And I know sometimes I can be a bit devil's advocate, but I try to always put that so people know that I'm not really being contentious.
Yep, and it comes across as being really authentic and super supportive. So your formula clearly works. So go you. It's awesome.
I think it's really good. Once people get to know you, it's a bit easier, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, totally. So in terms of and on this theme of giving time and energy, have you ever done formal mentorship? Because I imagine you've probably done quite a lot of informal mentorship over the years.
Yeah, I'm in the NZISM's mentoring group. I never mentoree, but that yes, I do.
Awesome. And so are you still doing that even at the moment?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, I have a day a month where you're right, I'm much better at ad hoc stuff than I am at being particularly organised. But I have a day a month now where I've tried to have my mentoring sessions booked so that there is a bit of organised rigour to the process. But to be honest, you're right, a lot of what I do is people just ringing me on the fly and answering a question or
that's cool.
Providing a reflection.
Yeah, amazing. That's so cool. And then, so do you find, are there any common themes or any topics over the last, say last 12 months that seem to be either a common theme or something that's piqued your interest?
Yeah, so I often end up mentoring women in safety, obviously, because and sometimes people will think they're not getting listened to
Yeah.
because they're female.
Mhm.
But often when you try and find out a bit more about it, it's actually more down to how the discussion has been had. Again, when you're trying to do safety to someone, so telling them they're doing it wrong without really understanding what their challenges are. And I think a lot of safety people still struggle speaking to board and exec, and sometimes tie themselves up in knots, either through nerves or they're trying to look professional, when actually it can cloud the message, and plain speaking is often an easier way. You know, trying to figure out that elevator pitch kind of angle.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I completely agree with that point. Where I still feel as a profession, we are still struggling to get access to the board and the exec. Often waiting in the corridor, hoping that we might get a 2-minute slot in front of them. And then when we do get in front of them, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Is we make the mistake of assuming that they need a certain style or form of language in order to win hearts and minds, when actually they probably appreciate some authentic, honest conversation, rather than getting lost in jargon and hard to understand terminology.
Yeah. So trying to think, I think a lot people already know the answers, and they know, you know, it's like with mentoring, it's not coaching, it is literally just helping people walk through what they already know and giving them a bit of confidence, really.
Yeah, love it. And so I feel that there's perhaps not necessarily enough of that going around in terms of the nurturing and support. And so again, I think it sounds like you perhaps may not be necessarily aware of it, but you've certainly got the badge of being someone that people can turn to. So
I certainly didn't realise I was doing anything different or more, or I just don't really think about it, I suppose. If someone emails me or messages me or rings or whatever with a question, sometimes I won't know the answer, but I might have come across it. Sometimes I'll help join the dots, or I'll go, oh, have you looked here? The whole of Fulton Hogan gets really cross with me, because if I know it's in our manual, I'll be like, have you looked in the living safely manual? And I'll be like, oh, that means it's in there, doesn't it? Yes, it does.
And that sounds great kind of coaching techniques as well. It's, you're not just kind of, here's the answer on a silver plate, go and do some homework and you will find it.
I used to be more, and I still find it hard to not just give the answer sometimes, but then you have to keep doing that thing. So you have to, I do still struggle with that sometimes myself, to be fair.
Yes, yeah, no, it's good, and that's probably a bit of an insight into you being at like the level 20 of the health and safety career, when we've got newbies who maybe level 1 year or 2 years.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is not take the controller and get them past the boss. I'm trying to give them the tips to get the thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. Without handing over the cheat codes. Yeah, love it. Yeah, love it. That's really, really cool.
We're changing on 1 July. All of our high-vis is going to look like this.
Okay.
Instead of the orange.
Yeah, what's the reasoning?
So we don't look like cones.
Ah, okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And at the Hui, they're like, oh, but what research did you do? Did you do this? Did you do it? I mean, no, we went cones are orange. This isn't. We did do some trials and things.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I like it.
Off the press. Not many people have seen this yet.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, why not? Because funny enough, I was thinking about that recently. It's just orange fatigue. Everything is orange. It makes sense.
And then when Copton was designed, there probably weren't as many cones and there weren't as many orange construction vehicles on a site, right? So orange made sense. But now, maybe not so much. And we've taken the chance, so they've got much bigger pockets. They've got a hook for the radios. And I should have talked about that for technical advance. But they've also got a double zip. So if you imagine high-vis designed for a bloke, woman's shape. Yeah. Bloke, woman. So if I want one that's going to do up over my arse and be comfortable when I sit down, it's massive in the shoulders. So everything of ours coming out with a zip is going to have one of those zips where you can do up and then you can undo it a bit from the bottom.
Yep.
And then when I sit down, I can undo it a bit.
Ah,
And I'm not going to catch on every freaking doorway
brilliant.
to man.
Brilliant. That's really, excellent. That's such a good idea. I've got a jacket that's got that double zip function. I
It's
never thought
great.
about it like
This
that.
has got a double zip thing. It's
Yeah, that's
great.
really smart.
And
Very
it
smart.
works for blokes as well as women, but it makes, it's not as good maybe as having proper women's design,
Sure.
but
Sure.
for a $12 vest, it's a pretty good improvement.
Yeah, that's so
Where they
cool.
cost now $20 or something.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's such a good example of kind of end user at the heart of the decision. This is really cool. Okay, so reflecting on the fact that you are at that level where it's like quite senior, experienced position, over the years, have you noticed any trends? Let's put it this sort of focus on health and well-being side of things. Have you seen any trends, any initiatives or drives that have either piqued your interest or you've noticed in recent years that's worth delving into?
I'm enjoying the fact that we are talking about health and well-being, not just about health and safety. So I think I said that my background's in cancer diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
So I've always been interested in the health side of health and safety. And in the HSC, I was really lucky that we had in-house experts. So we had occupational hygienists, we had occupational health nurses and ergonomists. So I was aware of some of those disciplines. So the fact that we are now more routinely talking about those health challenges of dust and noise and fumes and ototoxins and all that stuff, which we certainly weren't when I moved to New Zealand. And now that we're talking about well-being, not just mental well-being, but holistic well-being at all is a big shift, I think. And I think people are more confident now to ask, are you okay? Because we've all heard that "are you okay" slogan. That's easy. The scary bit is what you're going to do if someone says no.
Yes.
That's the hard bit, right? So I think with Sir John Cohen, with Mike King, all of those things, people are more confident not to necessarily be able to help themselves, but to know who they're going to ask them to help. So to do that connector role, to use the mates terminology, I think. And I guess that connector role is similar, or a navigator role under the Tafaratapa model. Even in the health space, like I mentioned, OC hygiene, human factors ergonomists, OC health nurses, there's still not enough, but there's more of those disciplines, more of those people now, so that we as generalists can act as those connectors to help get the other disciplines involved where we need to.
Yeah. Brilliant. Love it. Yeah, I was having a similar conversation with Matt Vaughan, who has created a really neat health and safety, a health and well-being self-diagnosis tool, which enables the user to be able to identify strengths and weaknesses and then to access a raft of various different service providers and experts in various fields. And one of the key things that came from that conversation was the importance of remaining within your lane, right? So as a practitioner, we know enough to be dangerous, right? But we're not experts in a particular space, but we do have contacts and we do have people that we can lean to or make that connection with the various other parties to find solutions. Really cool.
I'm the lowest level member of the New Zealand Occupational Hygiene Society. I think that's tech level. And I'm not a member of the Human Factors and Ergonomics group, but I know a lot of the same people. And I think, yes, there's roles to do for business to understand those specialists, but actually somehow when we're training new health and safety generalists, we need to upskill them, because that's how I got taught. It was in my postgrad diploma. We got taught about so that we actually knew that there was someone else in that lane, because I think we're still missing a bit of connection there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got me thinking around the scope of the health and safety manager, practitioner in general. Like, it feels like there's been a real scope creep over the last few years where it feels, and I think COVID was a really good example of this, where all of a sudden we were expected to be managing the response to this whole new unknown thing. And then on top of that, we've got wellness, well-being, health, economics, the
training, quality, environment,
yes,
pastoral care.
yeah, and on it goes, right? And it's like, I'm not sure if I signed up for all of this. And so you're right. It's the importance of perhaps being aware of the various associations that are out there and the skill sets that are out there. It's perhaps also a good time to remind people that they can make use of the Hasans register, and there's a really good search function there to be able to identify and find people in your regions. Or
you need to know the right word to look for, right?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Like any search engine, it's if you don't know what you're looking for, it's hard to know where to start.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I guess that kind of makes it even more important to be part of the various forums, either informal or informal, to be able to ask the questions and perhaps be steered in the right direction.
Certainly on the Facebook group, I know there's one of WorkSafe's ergonomists, and I'm sorry, I just said ergonomists, didn't I? I don't mean that. I mean occupational hygienists.
Yes.
And I'm not going to use his name because I don't know if he's in mines or not. But he'll jump on sometimes and just gently put people to point them towards the right bit of information, or, you know, put clips and links and things in. And I don't know if people know his role or not, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's good because they're getting really, really good advice.
Yeah.
With a question that they might not have dared go direct to the regulator with.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Yeah. I suspect that's probably true, actually.
And there'll be other WorkSafe people on there. I know there's certainly some retired ones and some different people, but it's good. It is good to have. It's a bit like the Melbourne Safety Forum, right? It's the same deal. It's getting people together so that they can ask questions and get hive mind advice.
Yes. Yeah. I like that term, hive mind. And then, so if we kind of take it back a couple of steps to your role as a National Health and Safety Manager, with that lens on, are there any learnings or experiences that spring to mind that would be worth sharing to perhaps those who are relatively new to the health and safety space?
Ooh, as in how to get to this role?
Yeah.
That would mean that I knew what I was doing.
What's the secret, Joe?
I think that just comes back to we use a couple of phrases as you have to, unfortunately, our job is often keep giving people bad news or news they don't want to hear. So yes, the way you planned to do that job, because you didn't get any safety advice at the time, you're now going to have to retrofit however many $1,000s worth of scaffold or whatever. Maybe you'd have talked to us sooner. So weasel your way in to any tender meetings or planning review meetings or anything you possibly had. Take the minutes, make the tea, whatever it takes to get in and be seen to be being useful, because then you get involved earlier and then you can be part of the team as opposed to always being the referee. And I had another thought in my head then, went in and out really quickly. We talk about the safety team having to be the conscience of the business. And that's hard, right? That's really hard. Yeah. And it means telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Yes. And you have to find your own tactic for how you make that palatable to people and they don't just see you as the problem. And how you know, rather than butting heads with people and the problem's forgotten, how you both focus, make the problem the problem. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. So
I can't do that without my hands, doesn't it?
Yeah. So would you agree with the idea that the two parties or the various parties all need to be gravitating towards the same end goal in order to make those types of challenging conversations easier?
I think we usually are. We're just we all want to do a good job, We want to get paid for it so that we've got a job to come back to the next day.
Yeah.
And we don't want to kill anyone on the way. I don't think there's often a lot of conflict at that level.
Yeah.
It's when you get into the detail, and it's hard to prove. This is the tough bit with health and safety. When you can make a change early on, it's very hard to prove and demonstrate that you saved a life or you saved some money compared to a retrofit of safety.
Yeah.
But what you can do is save a whole lot of pain. So instead of the safety person turning up and telling you your trench isn't right, if they've been involved in the design of the thing or had given input at the start, then it's more about improvements or tweaking than it is a whole nother problem. Something else I learned when I changed from being a health and safety inspector to being a manager in a company. As an inspector, you can tell someone something is wrong and it doesn't meet the law, and then you walk away, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that now. You have to be part of the solution. So you might be able to tell that some guarding isn't right, but that's not particularly helpful unless you've got some ideas of what right would look like, what good would look like. You can't just tell people something's wrong and expect them to love you for it. It's not going to work that way. No,
it's right. And I guess that comes down to the importance of people skills, right? And perhaps doubling down in that area.
Safety, old-fashioned safety, is safety with a clipboard. We're not there anymore. Don't do safety with a clipboard.
So what types of training or experience would you recommend those who are looking to sharpen their tools and perhaps have a better success rate of winning hearts and minds? Are there particular avenues you'd think be worth exploring?
This is a real hard one for me, and because I know people are talking about getting young people into our industry. I actually think the best experience is to have some time on the tools. So whether it's working in a supermarket, working in a hospital lab, doing hospitality, if you haven't worked something and had to follow stupid rules, it doesn't give you a lot of perspective. I actually think it's a really tough job for someone coming in if they haven't got any work experience. I don't think we're necessarily setting people up for success for that, even if it's only a little bit. And look, I'm really spoiled in my national role. I'm incredibly spoiled because we've got an awesome team of safety managers all across the country with all different skills and all different knowledge. And so all of us at the moment, we're quite lucky that we can go, okay, I'm struggling with this. The way I've tried isn't working. You can ring someone else within and go, how would you have this conversation? Where's my stumbling block? What's going on? And so that, again, just like say it out loud, even if it sounds really weird, but if you're in a closed room or whatever, say it out loud because it sounds different coming out of your mouth than it does on paper. And what might look fancy and good on paper, if it sounds like rubbish when you're saying it, scrap the bit of paper, try again verbally.
Yeah, love it. That's really good advice. And it kind of goes back to the whole 3 a.m. bullshit checklist, right?
It really does, good. Really. I'm never gonna use an iPad to be the babysitter of my kids. But when I want 5 minutes peace and quiet, I might actually, just might.
Yes, absolutely. And so, if we look at what's on the horizon in terms of the future of health and safety, the future of business, really, there's so many exciting, scary innovations and technologies and all sorts on the horizon. Is there anything that you see that excites you and kind of makes you hopeful for the future of health and safety outcomes here in New Zealand?
Yeah, I think the fact when you see people coming through now who have got good people skills, who understand the importance of going and understanding work as is done, not just work as is imagined, and the work that's been done around the health and safety reps and people talking, whether it's a rep or just someone doing the job. I know that's not very slick or trendy, but actually I think that really matters. A bit of a shift, at least in the wellbeing space, from off-the-shelf packages where you get a tick or an app or a thing and a score to actually stuff that's going to work for people. I really appreciate seeing Te Whare Tapawhā being used within New Zealand. It is a really good way of having conversations with people as well, of all sorts of different people. It was a bit of a struggle for me at first. I really struggled with the spiritual space because I'm not. I'm agnostic at best and an atheist on a bad day. But I can be spiritually connected to when you walk by the sea, or you know, the sound of running water, being out in the green air, green fresh air. So I tried to think of other things. I think using the other disciplines, as we get more and more of those other disciplines available to us in New Zealand, I think that will be really good. And I think if we could shift, we've got a lot of data between us, and I don't mean injury data, I don't mean TRIFA and stuff like that. But if you think about, annual health checks have been a legal requirement for however long. If we could get around the privacy and the data aspects of that, we could potentially get some really good information and be moving to the proactive space rather than forever being reactive. I think one of our hardest challenges is just getting the tech here too. That can be really difficult. And if you can get the tech, then you find out you can't get it calibrated this side of the equator or something, you know. There's still challenges.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I was about to ask, like, well, tech. So it sounds like in terms of the hardware rather than software tech.
I'm a bit old here, right? I'm just gonna own it. Having come from Europe, some of the stuff that really worries me in the plant and people interaction space is around the wearables and around the AI reacting to like the pattern on a high vis or something like that, because it doesn't affect families and children and non-workforce people who might enter our sites. It makes sense in a controlled environment like the rail corridor or a warehouse. But I've lost the plot. The AI is improving now, so it's not relying on the wearable or the pattern, and it's more able to recognize people and children and prams and things. So I think there will be some more improvements there. And in the GIS space, you know, with the underground services and things like that, I think there's definitely room for some more technological advances, but it's how you do that without creating complacency. So have you got a reasonably modern car?
No.
Got a reversing camera?
No. Oh, sorry, what was that?
Have you got a reversing camera?
Yes.
Okay. So my car, I've got a reversing camera, and I've also got that jazzy thing where you get the all the way round you vision with a push of a button. I've also got the cruise control that will hold you at a certain distance from the car in front.
Right, yes.
I have very nearly had accidents in hire cars now where I don't have those things, and I've become so used to them doing the thinking for me that my brain has stopped paying attention. So, you know, I've been reversing and the beep beep beeps me because the camera hasn't stopped me. Like my car will stop me and and I hadn't realized how complacent or reliant on it I'd become. So that makes me really nervous.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I remember back in the UK there was some kind of alarming stats. This was a couple of decades ago now, really, where the newer cars, the technology with braking systems had become so good that it was leading to, arguably, a significant increase in rear-ending events, because the older vehicles, that their braking systems were completely, you know, not anywhere near the capability of the vehicles that they were smashing into. So it's just this kind of disconnect when you've got, you know, emerging new tech versus ancient tech, which is probably our family vehicle. It's just they're poles apart.
I struggle now if I have to reverse old school with no camera. I find it really hard. It's really bad.
Okay, it's good to know. So everyone sees Joe in the car park.
It's all right. We always park so that we can drive out, right? That's why we
Yeah.
do. But it's when I was just after COVID and I was flying into Wanaka, and there weren't many hire cars in Wanaka, and I ended up with one. It didn't even have a USB point. I had to go and buy the thing that plugs into your cigarette lighter thingy. And it was like, oh my goodness, I hadn't realised how much of my brain had turned off because I knew the computer was doing my thinking for me. And I genuinely worry about that, because if we make things not too safe, I don't mean that, but if people have got no experience of thinking or making decisions and they're coasting, then if something changes that's out of the spec of the tech, we haven't got any practice of making a good choice, or we're just that bit slower reaction time because we weren't expecting to need to do anything. And I know I sound really old, but I am, so it's okay.
I think there's really an important message in there, because there's been a few videos shared on the Facebook group recently of black and white footage of men running. One of them was running up a ladder to do the maintenance on one of the chimney stacks. So he's like 100 meters up. Heart attack material. And then another one was a chap coming down the scaffolding that he had just set up. He must have been coming down for smoko or whatever, but he was flying down like a monkey, at the rate of knots. And but again, without battering an eyelid. And in both occasions, there's no SOPs, there's no harnesses, there's no format, nothing. Now, I don't know the injury or fatality stats for that period, but it does kind of make you just pause and think, all of the controls that we're now putting in place, are we reducing the risk awareness of the person at the coalface doing that work activity? It's really interesting.
It's okay, and we have to challenge ourselves. As long as if we try and focus on everything, that's just a nightmare. But if we're going, okay, we're going to accept some more rear-ended, but we're wearing our seatbelts or whatever, over the fatalities that we were getting, I think you have to keep that perspective. And I'm actually, maybe that's my other shift. I quite like that we're moving away from zero harm generally.
Yes.
Because that doesn't pass the bullshit test either.
No.
I know that's not going to be a popular thing to say out loud.
No, like, I mean,
but I think it should.
From a personal point of view, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. From a serious injury and life-changing injury, absolutely. But for every cut, scratch, bruise, twisted ankle, I could twist my ankle walking from here at the door because I'm special like that. But it's just an annoying thing. It's not something that's going to kill me. And I think we just have to keep that. I challenge myself. It's not that the tech isn't working. It's as long as the tech is preventing more fatalities, even if it is creating that bit of complacency. But it's a weird challenge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, that's cool. That's awesome. Thank you, Joe. Some food for thought there. Awesome. So this has been a really cool conversation. Like, I'm mindful of your time as well, because I'm taking full advantage.
This is why I'm helpful, because I talk too much.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's so good. So good. So
I don't work in a lab.
I can imagine you would have driven everyone crazy in the labs. No, this is so good, Joe. Thank you. Look, I'm going to reluctantly, I'm going to wrap up at this point, because I've still got 1,000,001 questions I'd love to ask you. I suspect, if you're willing, we may come back around and catch up again, maybe later in the year, just to pick your brains and see what you're seeing out there in the field.
I think you've got lots of other people who'd be more interesting.
I suspect we're probably going to have quite a lot of people very excited to see this interview. So it's been a real pleasure. So thank you, Joe. In terms of anyone who wants to reach out and get in touch with you, I appreciate, you're a busy person. So is it a case of perhaps reaching out via the Facebook group and on social? Would that be the best way for people to reach out?
People can track me down pretty easily on LinkedIn. Cool. Short messages, not long messages.
It's got to pass that bullshit test.
I'm sorry, it's another old thing. Video for me, I just find it so slow. Like, if you want something from me, send me something I can read.
Yep. All right, it's good to know. All right, I'll keep that in mind too.
So if you're putting it out there that people, I might as well at least get my preference in.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Well, it's all part of that bullshit test, right? You just got to make sure that you're meeting that criteria if you want to get in front of Joe. Awesome. Okay, well, Joe, thank you so much for your time today, and yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, thanks. Good luck making sense of that ramble.
Easy.